We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara and Pesachim Daf 80b. Gemara here is in the middle of explaining a machlokas amoraim. What happens if the majority are tamei meis, so they bring Pesach Rishon B'tumah, and then the minority are Zavin? Can the Zavin do Pesach Sheni? One opinion holds Tahara Midchia Tumah Lo Midchia. If you have a situation where the Karban Pesach was brought B'Tahara, so then those who couldn't bring it, they get pushed off, they can do Pesach Sheni. But if the situation is that Pesach Rishon is brought B'tumah, not B'Tahara, so then already there is no pushing off to Pesach Sheni. They don't have the opportunity to bring Pesach Sheni. Umar Savar, the other opinion holds, Zafilu Tumah Nami Midchia. Even in a situation where the Karban Pesach was brought Pesach Rishon B'tumah, still there's a concept of getting pushed off to Pesach Sheni, and the Zavin can bring Pesach Sheni. Gemara continues, Itmar, it was learned, Hayu Shlishisan Zavin, Ushlishisan Tahorin, Ushlishisan Tamei Mesim. Let's say a third of Klal Yisrael are Zavin, a third are pure, a third are Tahorin, and a third are Tamei Mesim. What do you do in that situation? So Amar Ravi Moni Bar Patish, Ravi Moni Bar Patish says, Osan Tamei Mesim, when we talk about those people who are Tamei Meis, Ein on Osan Loes Harishon, Veloes Hasheni. They're stuck, they can't bring Pesach Rishon, and they cannot bring Pesach Sheni. Barishon Lo Avdi, they can't bring Pesach Rishon. Why? Higdilu Zavin ala Tahorim, because if you add the Zavin to those who are Tahorim, the Lo Avdi B'tumah, who are not bringing it B'tumah, Sahavilei Tmei Mesim Miyuta. The Tmei Mesim are really only a minority. Umiyuta Lo Avdi Barishon, and if you have a minority that are Tamei Meis, they can't do Pesach Rishon. The Zavin don't count in terms of doing B'tumah, in terms of doing Pesach Rishon. So what about Pesach Sheni? B'Sheni Lo Avdi, they can't do Pesach Sheni either, because in that case, Nitzrafu Zavin im Tamei Mesim. You have to add on the Zavin to the Tamei Mesim, to Lo Avdi Barishon, because the Zavin didn't do Pesach Rishon either. They were Tamei, they couldn't do Pesach Rishon. Havelahu Ruba, so now you have a majority that are trying to do Pesach Sheni. V'Ruba Lo Midchu Le Pesach Sheni. You can't push off a majority to Pesach Sheni. Rashi over here says, Barishon Lo Avdi Dahat Tamei Mesim Miuta. The Tamei Mesim are a minority, they can't do Barishon. Uv'Sheni Lo Avdi, they can't do Sheni either. Dehoel V'Taru Zavin Achshav, because now that the Zavin have become Tahor, so Nimtzu Rov Tzibor Tzrichelo, now the majority needs Pesach Sheni. V'Ruba de Tzibor B'Sheni Lo Avdi. Halacha is that when it comes to Pesach Sheni, the majority of the Tzibor does not do Pesach Sheni. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, HaPesach shenizrak damo. Let's say you have a situation of a Korban Pesach, you already did the Zrikas Hadam, v'yachar kach noda shu tamei, and then he finds out afterwards he's actually tamei. So hatzitz meratza. So then the tzitz is meratza. Now this is talking about not that he himself is tamei. It's talking about a situation where the Korban Pesach is tamei. The meat, the Pesach itself is tamei. Rashi says, HaPesach shenizrak es damo v'yachar kach noda shu tamei. HaPesach o hadam. Either the Korban Pesach became tamei, the blood became tamei, but he found out after the fact. So then hatzitz meratza, the tzitz is going to be meratza, upater mi Pesach Sheni, meaning after the fact he's pater from Pesach Sheni, it's considered as if it is okay. But the Mishnah continues, nitma haguf, if the person himself became tamei, so then einat tzitz meratza, then the tzitz is not going to be meratza, it's not going to work. Mipnei shamru, because they say hanazir v'osa pesach, whether you're talking about a nazir who's bringing his karbanos, whether you're talking about someone bringing a korban pesach, hatzitz meratza al tumas ha'adam, hadam, the tzitz is meratza on tumah of the blood, v'ein hatzitz meratza al tumas haguf. But the tzitz is not meratza if the person himself becomes tamei. Now, nitzma tumas hatahom, if the person becomes tamei with tumas hatahom, which Rashi will explain is a suffix tumah, so then hatzitz meratza, the tzitz is going to be meratza. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Nitzmu bailov tumas haguf b'meis. Let's say the owner became tamei with tumas haguf with a mace. Einat tzitz meratza. So in that case, the tzitz is not going to be meratza. V'chayiv lasos pesach sheni. He's going to have to bring pesach sheni. Da b'shas zrika lav bar mi'avid pesachu. Because it turns out at the time of the zrikas hadam, he was not somebody who could bring a korban pesach. The rachmana dache, because such a person who is tamei, so he's really pushed off, he's not allowed to bring it. So in that case, the tzitz is not meratza. The tzitz is only going to be meratza if you find out after the fact that it was the korban pesach or the dam that was tamei. Hanazir d'chsiv bei v'chiyamus meis v'ayomim harishonim yiplu im nitma b'meis kodem havoas karbanosov. So again, a similar idea by the nazir. Halach is that if he becomes tamei meis before he brings the karbanos, everything is undone in terms of his nazirus. So it's the same basic idea when it comes to the nazir and the osa pesach. The tzitz can be meratza on tumas hadam, but not on tumas haguf. hatzitz meratza al tumas adam betagalochaso kashera umuter lishtos yayin v'litami l'mesim. So in such a situation, again, if there was only tumas adam, that tzitz is meratza, everything is kosher, he can now drink wine, he can become tamei meis, he's no longer considered a nazir. V'yena tzitz meratza al tumas haguf, but that's not true when it comes to tumas haguf. V'im nitma be'es havoas karbonosav soser as hakol. If he becomes tamei at the time that he brings the karbonos, everything is the karbonos are no good. Now the Mishnah concluded over there with tumas hatahom, so nitma gufo betumas hatahom, betumas safek, meaning there's a doubt of tuma. Kedemefarish begemara hareza meratza, so in that case it is meratza. The halacha Moshe Misinai he dehutra tumas hatahom lohem kedamar begemara. That's already a halacha Moshe Misinai in that situation. And the Gemara over here says, Taimo de nizrak v'achakach. The reason why in this Mishnah that tzitz is meratza is because he already did the zrika, then he found out that it was tamei. Avol nodav yachakach nizrak, but let's say he knew that it was tamei, and then he did the zrika sadam anyway. Lo meratza, it wouldn't work. So the Gemara says we have a contradiction to that from the following. Or Raminu, we have the following contradiction. Al meh hatzitz meratza. It says, what is the tzitz meratza on? Al hadam v'al abasar v'al achelev, on the meat and on the blood and on the meat and on the fat. Shenitma, that they become tamei. Bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'onas, bein b'ratzon, bein b'yachad, bein b'tzibur. It doesn't matter whether it's a mistake, whether it's on purpose, accident, willingly, whether it's an individual, whether it's a community. It doesn't make any difference. So in any case, the assumption over here is even if it's b'mezid, even if you knew that there was tumah, that's what it says bein b'mezid. Even if you knew there was tumah, it would still be good. Our Mishnah said achar kach nodif. Afterwards, you find out after you did the zrika, then it's okay. So that seems to be a contradiction. So the Gemara says, Amar Ravina, Ravina answers, Tomaso bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid hurtza zrikaso. When it comes to the tumah, we're talking about if the tumah happened b'shogeg or b'mezid, then it's hurtza, then it's going to be accepted. But zrikaso, but when it comes to the zrikas adam, there should be a period after hurtza. Zrikaso, when it comes to the zrikas adam, b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid lo hurtza. Then if he did it b'shogeg, he didn't realize there was tumah involved, that's okay. But if he did it b'mezid, it's not okay. So in other words, the way that Ravina is answering, he's saying is that when it says over here bein b'mezid, that's not going on the zrika. That's going on the tumah. If the tumah is b'shogeg or b'mezid, it could be hortza. But the zrika certainly has to be b'shogeg. No contradiction to our Mishnah. Rabbi Shela says, Rikaso bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid hortza. When it comes to the zrika, whether it's b'shogeg, whether it's b'mezid, it's going to be hortza. Tumasa, when it comes to the tumah, b'shogeg hortza, b'mezid lo hortza. If the tumah is b'shogeg, it could be accepted. If it's b'mezid, it's not accepted. So according to Rabbi Shela, no. And the contrary, even if you do the zrika b'mezid, it's still going to be okay. So elahad katani bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid. So what does it mean bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid? Hachikamer means as follows: nitma b'shogeg. If the tumah is b'shogeg, v'zarku bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid, but the zrika doesn't matter if it's shogeg or mezid. Hortza, then it is going to be hortza. So then it's a question against our Mishnah. But what about that which it says in our Mishnah? It says that if you did the zrika and then you found out. So our Mishnah implies that only if you did the zrika and only then you found out there was tumah. But if you knew there was tumah and you did the zrika, if you did it b'mezid, lo, so then it wouldn't be hortza. So how do you explain our Mishnah according to Rabbi Shela? So Rabbi Shela says, Hu adinda filu nodav yachakach nizrak. Really, the truth is in our Mishnah, even if you would know there was tumah and then you would do the zrikas adam, even in that situation as well, it would be hortza. So why does the Mishnah specifically say a case where you did the zrikas adam and then you found out? It's just because we're going to say at the end of the Mishnah a similar kind of language. We want to balance out the language of the Mishnah. The end of the Mishnah says nitma haguf. It says if the person becomes tamei, einat tzitz meratza. So it says that tzitz is not meratza. So in that case, da'afilu nizrak v'yachach nodalo. In that case, when you have a tumas haguf, even if you already did the zrikas adam and then he finds out that he has tumas haguf, it still doesn't work. So katani reisha nami nizrak v'yachach noda. That's why in the reisha the Mishnah it also says he did the zrika and then he found out. But the truth of the matter is, according to Rabbi Shela, the way to understand our Mishnah doesn't make any difference. Even if the person would know that the dam was tamei or the carbon was tamei, it would still be hortza if he did the zrikas adam afterwards. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, nitma tumas hatahom v'chulu. It says, let's say there's a suffix kind of tumah. So boy Rami Bar Chama asks the following question: Kohen hamiratza b'karban osein Hutrlo tumas hatahom olo. Let's say you have a Kohen who's bringing the karbanos. Is tumas hatahom allowed for that or not? Mi amrinan ki gemiri tumas hatahom bebailim. Maybe you're going to say that the din of tumas hatahom applies by the owners. But Kohen lo gemiri, the din of tumas hatahom does not apply by the Kohen. O Dilmer, maybe you'll say bezivcha gemiri, it's a din by karbanos. Lo shna bekohen v'lo shna bebailim. Doesn't matter if you're talking about a Kohen. Doesn't matter if you're talking about with the bailim. Rashi over here says, "Bekarban osein," meaning the nazir v'osa pesach. The case is you have a nazir, or somebody's bringing a carbon pesach, hutra lo, so we know that it's allowed. Im nitma gufo besafik tuma, if there's a safik tuma. The carbon yachid, we also know that a carbon of a yachid, eno docha Shabbos v'tuma, is generally not docha Shabbos and tuma, but we say again by safik tuma it's okay. So ki gemiri de tumas hatahom mutaris lem bebailim hu de gemiri. Maybe it's only allowed if the owners have a tumas hatahom. Aval bekohen lo, but the kohen would not be good. O dilma bezivcha gemiri. Maybe it's by the karbanos, meaning bekarbanos halalu, bepesach hu bekarbanos nazir gemiri. Maybe it was learned that by Pesach and Nazir. So in those cases, it was learned the hutrulem tumas hatahom shel guf, that tumas hatahom is okay. Hilkach loshna bebailim veloshna bekohen. Maybe it doesn't make a difference if it's the bailim or the kohen. So that's the question of Rami Bar Chama. What's the halach if the kohen who's taking care of these particular karbanos has tumas hatahom? So Amar Rava says, Tashma, come in here the following proof. The Tani Rabbi Chia taught in a brayso as follows, Lo amru tumas hatahom elo lemeis bilvad. It said, the statement was as follows, the din of tumas hatahom is only said by a mace. Rashi over here says, Lo amru tumas hatahom de hutra ben nazir v'yosa pesach. The halacha of tumas hatahom, that it's allowed by a nazir or by carbon pesach, elo b'meis bilvad avol shar tumas safek lo hutru. They allowed it by tumas mace, which is a safek, but by other tumas which are a safek, it was not allowed. That's what the brayso said. So now we're going to try to infer from that to our question. So lemu'ute mai, what is this coming to exclude? What does it mean we only allow it here and somewhere we don't allow it? Lav lemu'ute tumas hatom the sheretz. Isn't it saying that if you have a safek tuma, let's say by a sheretz, so then we wouldn't allow safek anymore? Uvamai askinan, and what exactly is the case? Ineimu bebailim, if you're talking about the owner, let's say we're talking about the owner has a safek tumas sheretz. Uveman, and which particular owner are we talking about? So Ibn Nazir, let's say we're talking about Nazir. So Mimahani Bey, is it really going to be effective in that case? Rashi over here says, Uveman, b'mi tera tumas hatahom zu de sheretz de kamar lo hutra. Which individual had this safek tumas that we're saying is not allowed? Ibn Nazir mimahani bey afilu tumos de sheretz vadai listor minyano v'havas karbonosov. When it comes to a Nazir, even real tumas sheretz is not really a problem. Even if it was vadai tumas sheretz, we can't be talking about that. So Ibn Nazir mimahani bey, you think it's effective? You think tumas sheretz does anything to a Nazir? Ki yomus meis olav amarachmana. It only talks about when you have a situation of a dead body. That kind of tumah is problematic and undoes the count of a Nazir. But that doesn't apply to tumas sheretz anyway, so we can't be talking about a Nazir. So Elabosa Pesach. Obviously, this brayso is talking about somebody who's bringing carbon Pesach, and it's saying that the din of tumas tahom doesn't apply. Let's say you have tumas sheretz, that's a suffix, by someone bringing carbon Pesach, you don't have the leniency. So the Gemara says, Hanichol l'ma'adamar ein shochtin v'zarkan al tmei sheretz. Now that's all good according to the one who says that somebody who is tamei sheretz, you can't shecht and you can't do zrikas adam of a carbon Pesach for that person. That makes sense. If it was real tumas sheretz, you would have a problem. And we're saying, what about by a suffix? And we're saying, also by a suffix you have a problem. But according to the one who says that there's no problem with tumas sheretz, let's say somebody's the owner of a carbon Pesach is tamei sheretz, you can shech the carbon Pesach on his behalf, and you can do this rikas adam on his behalf. So hashta tuma yedua hutralo. If you know about tumas sheretz with certainty, it's okay. So tumas hatom lo kol shekain. Of course, tumas hatom is going to be okay. So none of these cases make any sense in terms of understanding this brayso in terms of the owner. So elalav bekohen. So rather, what must be talking about? We're talking about the kohen has tumas sheretz, ushma mino hutralo tumas hatahom, and you see that even by the kohen in general, tumas hatahom works. In other words, the leniency. If there's a suffix tuma by the kohen, we say hortza, And what the Bryce is saying is that's only true by Tamei Meis. But if you have Tumas Sheretz, it's not going to be true. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Lo, no, you can interpret the Bryce in another fashion. Leolam b'bailim, really we're talking about the owners becoming Tamei. Uve Pesach, we're talking about Karban Pesach. V'lemuute Tumas hatahom deziva. What we're talking about is, let's say you have a suffix whether you're a Zav or not. So in that situation, so there's no leniency of Tumas hatahom by Ziva, even though there's a leniency of Tumas hatahom by Tamei Meis. The Gemara says, is that really true? V'tumas tahom de ziva lo meratza. Is it really true that when it comes to tumas tahom of ziva, there is no ritzoy, it's not accepted? V'atanya, but we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yossi says, shomeres yom keneged yom. Let's say you have a woman who's watching one day after the other. Sheshachtu v'zarko aleh. They shech the Karban Pesach and they do this rika on her behalf. Take a look at Rashi over here. Liolam b'ba'ilim of Yosef Pesach. So Rav Yosef says we're really talking about the owner and we're talking about Karban Pesach with the kashalach mahanya beituma achrisi. And so you asked the question. You said, "What are you talking about? There is no other tumah because if we're talking about tumas sheretz, according to one man, tumas sheretz is not a problem anyway. So no, iko tumas ziva. There is an issue of tumas ziva. She shivas yamim. It's a 7-day tumah. Vein shochtim v'zark and olav. You're not allowed to shecht and do zrik of the Karban Pesach on someone who has ziva. Ve'ashmin and Rabbi Yechia, the tumas hatahom de ziva. Rabbi Yechia is teaching us. Let's say you have a suffix of ziva. Kegon zav b'shvi shelo. Let's say you have a situation of a zav on his 7th day. The suffix u'shema yira hayom. So we don't know he's trying to purify himself. He's on the 7th day, but maybe he's going to see a discharge on this day. V'yister kol ma'ashamon, in his whole count of 7 days of purification, it's all going to be undone. Suffix lo yira, but there's a doubt. Maybe he won't see any tumah. V'areu katamei sheretz dechazi l'orsa. Then he's already like the same as someone who's tamei sheretz. He'll be ready tonight. V'havelo tumas hatom u'paslabe. That situation is a situation of tumas hatahom. In other words, you don't know what's going to be with this zav. Is he going to be ready to eat the Karban Pesach tonight? Is he not going to be ready to eat the Karban Pesach tonight? He's in the middle of his purification process. So we're saying the halach of tumas hatahom doesn't apply in such a situation. And to that, the Gemara is asking a question from a shomeres yom keneged yom, and we'll see that question in the next video on Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph.